Well, hello and welcome once again to another edition of Pray on This. I know it's been a while since I dropped a video, but life gets in the way, like putting that ring on my left hand, which I did last week. And this video might be a little long, but it's being done right before I leave with my lovely new wife on our honeymoon. I may do a video or two while I'm away, but you know how things get. So, since our last time that we chatted, let's see what's changed. Well, if you go over to Canada 338, the numbers are changing quite a bit. The Conservatives are up in the polls, and the seat by seat projection has them at a minimum of 149 seats right now in safe, likely, leaning, and toss ups. And it's got the Liberals down to 126. But the projected numbers could be anywhere from 121 seats for the Conservatives to as high as 179, which is definitely a majority government. And the best the Liberals could hope to do is 151, but more than likely are going to come in somewhere around 95 to 115. The NDP is looking like they're going to gain some new seats in the next election. But what's the cause of all this? I mean, we've had some really interesting things happen. First of all, we got Stephen Guilbeault trying to go to war with Saskatchewan. Scott Moe saying that it's impossible for his province to meet the federal guidelines that all of their electricity will come from renewable sources by 2035, and has said that he will continue to run the coal-fired plants as well as the natural gas-fired plants as long as they are viable to run. That prompted Guilbeault to come back and basically say that it's against the criminal code of Canada for people to do this. So now we have a minister of the federal crown saying that he will have a premier of a province arrested unless they buy into his, for lack of a better term, activist idealism when it comes to climate change. That's not a good look. As a matter of fact, Mr. Trudeau should know that having a minister like this causes you more problems than it solves for you. But I don't think Justin cares. Then we move on to Krista Freeland, our ever popular finance minister, who testified last week at the Finance Committee. And she refused to answer how much money the federal government will be paying in the next 12 months to service the national debt, which now sits at $1.2 trillion. Well, Ms. Freeland, I don't know why you wouldn't answer that question. I mean, to be brutally honest, it's right there in black and white in your budget. We're going to spend $41 billion servicing the debt. There's only three things in the budget that you spend more money on than servicing the debt, and you're going to overtake two of them within the next 5 years. You've even got so bad managing our money that you don't even have a projection to go back to balance when you project it 5 years out, and you're going to allow the debt to increase to 1.3 to 1.4 trillion dollars if you guys are reelected. That's bad money management, and Canadians are realizing it. Canadians are also just getting sick of our always traveling, never answer questions prime minister. And right now, he's in Japan at the G7, where he lectured Italy's prime minister on 2S LGBTQAI plus rights. Hopefully, I got that acronym right. And he's been ridiculed for it. As a matter of fact, several Italian newspapers printed a picture of our prime minister in blackface and saying, "This buffoon wants to lecture us on democracy." Not just that, but at the G7, Trudeau also said that he should be the dean of the G7, considering that he's the longest serving leader. He was laughed at, just like he's laughed at in most jurisdictions outside this country. And inside the country, the man can't go anywhere without causing controversy or being yelled at by Canadians. I was even shocked myself the day of my wedding when I had to run to the florist to pick up the flowers last Friday, and there was a F. Trudeau campaign going on. Looked to be very well attended. Um, I think that that message goes a little over the top, but hey, I dislike him as much as those people do. I'm just not out there with a flag that says F. Trudeau on it, or flying the Canadian flag upside down, which is the international sign of distress. This country is getting into very, very tough times. And it's quite obvious who's to blame. It's Justin Trudeau and the federal Liberal government. Nobody trusts them anymore, and things are falling apart. It seems to be a disease on the left right now of not being able to get your point across. I also bring to your attention the Alberta election, which is going on, where, as of polls this morning when I checked, it looks like Danielle Smith in 6 days is going to be definitely reelected Premier of Alberta. And she's going to do so handily. There's only 2 seats that are a toss up that will give her a majority. And in those, her candidates have enough of a lead that it's well above, it's right there on the cusp of the um, margin of error of 4% for provincial polls. But the leading trend is that the Conservatives are gaining. So the United Conservative Party will once again lead Alberta. Danielle Smith will be the Prime Minister. Will this have further complications across the country? I believe it will. Danielle Smith is a unapologetic conservative, and I don't think that this is going to play out too well for Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the New Democratic Party of Canada. For those of you who don't know, the New Democrats are one party. It doesn't matter who leads the provincial wing of the party, they all answer to Jagmeet Singh. I do find it amazing that Jagmeet Singh has stayed out of this election. And also the fact that, considering how close Rachel Notley was to our Prime Minister when she was Premier from 2015 to 2019, he himself has also stayed out of Alberta politics. I think they both know that they're poison and that they would do more harm than good. I am curious how much longer Jagmeet is going to continue to support Justin. The reason I say this is that his seat, Burnaby South, is now in the range of being a safe hold for the NDP. Basically, Jagmeet is guaranteed to be re-elected as the Member of Parliament for Burnaby South. He's up in the polls. He, right now, could gain a minimum of 4 new seats, but more than likely will come out somewhere in the 30s. He might even surpass the Bloc Québécois as the third party in Parliament. And if things continue the way they are, the Liberals might totally be decimated, and Jagmeet might end up leader of the official opposition. The question is how much longer will he continue to support Trudeau? We all know that before he goes to the polls, he has to do what Jack Layton did in 2010, which is distance himself from not only the ruling governing party, but he also has to put some distance between himself with the other opposition parties. Now, the only thing that's different this time is that back in 2010, the NDP was voting with the Conservatives to keep them in power. But Jack Layton did a very good job of distancing himself from Stephen Harper and really painting a very different picture between himself and then Liberal leader Michael Ignatieff. It worked out very well in the NDP's favor. They got over 100 seats, which was the first time in their history they ever did so. And they called it the Orange Crush. The Liberals were decimated, their worst showing ever in a federal election. And it makes me wonder, how much longer will Jagmeet continue to prop up the Prime Minister? It just seems to me that everything that Justin touches right now is falling apart. The Stellantis deal was almost lost. For those who don't know, Stellantis is now the parent company of Chrysler, and there was a billions of dollars battery plant which was put on hold. They actually stopped construction because the Trudeau Liberal government was not giving what they had promised. I think there was also a little bit of holding the government hostage there, considering how much they gave to the VW plant in St. Thomas, but that definitely would have put all nails in the Liberal coffin. I don't know how much longer Justin can hang on. For those who believe that Justin Trudeau will win a fourth election, I got some really bad news for you. It's just not going to happen. Liberal support is bleeding. It's bleeding left and bleeding right. And the size of the tent, in other words, available voters to vote Liberals, has shrank drastically over the last 8 years. The simple fact is, you have a prime minister who is hated. His policies aren't working. The government looks old, tired, arrogant, and has no idea how to get out of the mess that it's put itself in. You have a very sharp, very intelligent, quick on his feet, conservative leader who is dodging and parrying every attack you throw at him, and his thrusts are landing. You have an NDP leader who is starting to turn on you. And people don't want to hear this, but Jagmeet can be very effective when he wants to be. If Jagmeet is on his A game and Pierre Poilievre is on his, Justin Trudeau could not possibly compete. The wedge issues are gone. All he has left to play is the abortion card, possibly racism. I don't see where we're going to be fooled by that again. The Liberal Party of Canada is in deep, deep trouble, and their hold on this country is coming quickly to an end. I do hope that it comes quicker than I think it will, but we all know what hope does. One last thing I want to talk about before I sign off, possibly for a week, will be Bonnie Crombie, the current mayor of Mississauga, who became mayor in 2014 when the late Hurricane Hazel McCallion decided finally not to run. She is going to throw her hat in the ring to be the leader of the Ontario Liberal Party. Now, Ms. Crombie is a former Liberal federal cabinet minister. She is the current mayor of Mississauga. And quite truthfully, I don't understand why she would do this. There are those who are dyed-in-the-wool liberals who say this is the greatest thing since sliced bread and that Ford will be in trouble when she's the leader of the Liberal Party. Yet, there are two things that win elections. The first is that Canadians typically don't vote in governments, we vote governments out. The second is to get your message across. It costs money. Now, the way that political parties are financed in this country, you can get small personal donations. I believe the limit is $1,100. That's all that can be donated. Corporations do not finance political parties anymore in this country. Neither do unions. And one of the biggest sources of revenue is being paid by the taxpayer for the number of votes you got in the last election, as well as the number of seats you hold in either parliament or a legislature. The Ontario Liberal Party only holds 8 seats in the provincial legislature. They are not an official party, which means they do not get a budget for research, they don't get a budget for staff, they do not get the allotment for being an official party, and their vote tally was third best in the last provincial election, which means they get the lowest amount of money. There's a reason that in the last provincial election, Stephen Del Duca was being driven around in a Sprinter van and that he was holding all his press conferences in public parks. And there was no rallies held at major golf courses or major event centers because the Liberal Party of Ontario didn't have the money to pay for it. For public parks, they're free to use. And the minivan, that's all they could afford for transportation. That's what 63-year-old Bonnie Crombie is setting herself up for. It doesn't matter how popular she's going to be if she can resonate with the rest of Ontario. I do know that my mother-in-law lives in Brampton and that the people of Brampton don't really like the mayor of Mississauga. So I don't know how helpful it's going to be that she's the mayor of a major GTA city. But out where I live in southwestern Ontario, there's a lot of people who wouldn't know who she was if they hit her with a car, let alone would support her. So I don't think that her current resume will resonate with the rest of Ontario. And I think she's going to be stuck with the same problem Stephen Del Duca had, which is very low finances, very low war chest to fight an election with. She's going to be in a minivan. She's going to be giving announcements from public parks. She's not going to be sitting in major venues. It's really hard to win an election when you do that. Also, it's going to be very difficult for her to increase her public profile simply because she isn't the leader of a party. She has the same ability to be recognized in question period or giving speeches or things like that in the legislature as an independent, because that's actually how the legislature currently looks at the Liberal Party of Ontario members, no different than an independent. At 63 years old today, 3 years from a provincial election, actually slightly more than 3 years from a provincial election, 3 years and 2 weeks to be exact, we're looking at a leader that, if she wins, will be 66 years old when the next provincial election comes along. She has 8 seats. She's going to have trouble getting her message out. I think the best that the Liberal Party of Ontario can hope for in the 2026 provincial election will be to rebuild the party and come from 8 seats to maybe 20. Cut into the NDP and a little bit of the conservative seat totals in slightly more centrist ridings. But to go from being a non-party to the government, that's virtually impossible. 2030, I think that she would have a very good chance of becoming leader of the opposition. She may be able to vault into the premier's chair, but it's still going to be quite a tall order. And by that time, she's going to be 70 years old. The more than likely spot where the Ontario Liberal Party will once again be in a position to challenge the Ontario Progressive Conservative Party for the big chair is going to be 30 34. At that point in time, Ms. Crombie will be 74 years old. I realize that the Ontario Liberals are looking for the magic bullet, but unfortunately, I think you're doing the same thing the federal Liberals did in 2006 when you deep sixed Paul Martin for Stéphane Dion, and 2008 when you got rid of Dion for Michael Ignatieff. And I'm sorry, but Bonnie Crombie, she is not Justin Trudeau. The Crombie name is not the same as the Trudeau name, and I don't see where this is going to have great effect in the province of Ontario. It's very interesting as we take a look as to what's happening with the more left of center parties in this country. It seems to me that the culture war, which we have imported from the United States, has had a spillover, and that Canadians are not liking it. And they're turning more quickly on the left-wing parties of Canada than our U.S. cousins are turning on the Democrats in the States. It's going to be a very interesting year ahead, and I think that it's going to end very badly for those on the left side of the political spectrum. That, as always, is Pray on This. I wish you all a great week. I hope that it's a wonderful short week for you, and I am now off like a herd of turtles to take a car tour with my lovely new wife, and I will see you all again either late this week or early next week. God bless you, and take care.